While I was in the kitchen making dinner, I overheard my family laughing. "He's just our wallet with legs." Mom snorted, "He'll pay no matter what." I didn't say a word, but when the rent was due, I was gone. There are some betrayals so deep, they don't just break your heart, they shatter your entire understanding of loyalty. For me, it started with a casual laugh and a phrase that branded me a wallet with legs, but it ended with identity theft and a brutal lesson in self-preservation. My name's Joel. I'm 29 now, and for the longest time, I was the quiet anchor of my family. The one who always showed up, always paid, never complained. My friends used to tease me, calling it provider syndrome, but I just brushed it off. I genuinely thought that's what family was all about, right? You help. You don't keep score. You carry the weight when others can't, or won't. My mom always said I was the reliable one, and I wore that title like armor, even when it started to feel like a heavy chain. When my dad passed away suddenly when I was just 22, everything fell apart. My younger sister, Lily, was still in high school, and my mom, well, she just wasn't built to handle things alone. So I stepped in. I worked 2 jobs, chipped away at Dad's debts, made sure Lily stayed in her extracurriculars, and kept food on the table. No one actually asked me to do it, but the silence, that heavy, quiet expectation, was enough. It was clear I was supposed to fill the void Dad left behind. At first, I didn't mind. I was grieving too, and helping them gave me a purpose. But slowly, over the years, it stopped feeling like a choice. It became an obligation, a trap I couldn't escape. Mom moved in with me after the house went into foreclosure, and Lily followed when she started college nearby. My tiny 2-bedroom apartment became our new home, though it rarely felt like mine. I was the cook, the cleaner, the rent payer, the bill coverer, all while grinding through a full-time IT support job and picking up freelance gigs on weekends. Meanwhile, Lily partied her way through college, eventually dropping out in her 3rd year because school wasn't for her. Mom, of course, supported that decision, saying Lily needed time to find herself. I found it a bit ironic, considering I never had the luxury to lose myself in the first place. But still, I kept going. Birthdays? I paid. Holidays? I bought the gifts. Emergencies? I handled them. Like the time Lily rear-ended someone, and Mom, with that familiar sigh, said, "She's just a kid, Joel. Can't you help her out this once?" It was always this once. Always just until next month. I got used to swallowing my frustration and nodding, like some tired but utterly dependable pack mule. My breaking point didn't arrive with a bang. Not yet, anyway. It started with laughter. One Thursday evening, I dragged myself home, absolutely wiped out from a 12-hour day, thanks to a network crash at a client site. I'd barely kicked off my shoes before Mom called from the couch. "Joel, honey, can you whip something up? We're starving." Lily was right there beside her, scrolling through her phone, sipping a fancy iced coffee I knew she hadn't paid for. I forced a smile and headed to the kitchen, still wearing my work badge. I was chopping vegetables, half listening to their conversation in the living room, when I heard it. Honestly, Lily snorted. "He's like a wallet with legs." There was a burst of laughter, mostly Mom's. Then her voice cut through, clear as a bell. "He'll pay no matter what. That's what makes him useful." I froze mid-chop. Useful. Like I was some kind of vending machine with a pulse. Like the money I gave, the sacrifices I made, the years I spent making sure they were okay. None of it was love. It was just utility. They didn't know I could hear them. That's what made it worse. I didn't say a word. I didn't storm in and confront them. I finished making dinner, chicken stir-fry, because it was Lily's favorite, and served it like usual. I even smiled when Mom said, "You're a lifesaver, Joel." But something inside me snapped that night. Not loudly, but quietly. Like a rope fraying at the edge, one thread at a time. I washed the dishes alone after they went back to their TV show, trying to pretend like nothing had changed. But everything had. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying their words over and over. Wallet with legs. He'll pay no matter what. How many times had they said things like that when I wasn't listening? How long had I been a joke to them? A walking ATM with no spine. I started noticing things I'd ignored before, like how Lily hadn't applied for a single job since dropping out, despite promising she would. Or how Mom always seemed to have money for wine and takeout, but never for groceries. Every time I brought up budgeting, they'd change the subject or play the guilt card. After everything we've been through, You want a nickel and dime us now? I thought maybe I was overreacting. Maybe they were just venting. So, I gave it a few days. Then came the final straw. It was the first of the month, rent day. I came home from work to find Mom and Lily sitting at the kitchen table, sipping cocktails, laughing over celebrity gossip. The rent envelope I'd left on the counter was gone. When I asked about it, Mom just waved her hand dismissively. Oh, I used some of it for groceries and utilities. You can cover the rest later, right? They didn't even ask. Didn't even pretend to feel bad. That's when I knew. I wasn't family. I was a resource. So, I smiled, nodded, and said, sure, I'll figure it out. But I was already planning my next move. And when the rent came due again, I vanished. The thing about disappearing is you don't do it overnight. Not when you're like me, someone who spent years putting others first, trained to flinch at guilt trips and bend under pressure. I didn't even pack a suitcase right away. I just started pulling back quietly, carefully, like a man testing a rope to see how far it'll stretch before it snaps. First, I stopped offering. No more "I got it" when the internet bill showed up. No more spontaneous grocery runs or surprise takeout nights. I wanted to see what would happen if I just didn't. Would they step up? Would they even notice? Spoiler, they noticed, but not in the way I hoped. 3 days after that rent stunt, Lily stomped into my room without knocking, again, and dropped her cracked phone in my lap. Can you fix this? I need it for my interview tomorrow. I raised an eyebrow. Interview. She rolled her eyes. Chill. It's just this receptionist job, but I need my phone working, like, now. I looked at the screen. She dropped it hard. Spiderweb cracks across the glass. Touchscreen barely responsive. It would cost $100 to fix, maybe more. I hesitated. Lily, I said carefully, I think maybe you should take it to a repair shop this time. I'm kind of tight on money right now. That one sentence. You'd think I'd slapped her. Tight on money? She scoffed. Are you serious? You just got paid. I blinked. How would she know that? She didn't answer, just folded her arms and said, whatever. I'll ask Mom. She added, you've been acting weird lately anyway. That night, I double-checked my bank account and noticed a few weird charges I didn't recognize, including a $76 Sephora transaction. I didn't even have to ask. The next morning, I confronted Mom in the kitchen. Did you use my card again? She didn't even look up from her crossword puzzle. Oh, that? I thought you wouldn't mind. Lily needed some new skincare stuff, and I figured. You figured I wouldn't mind? She sighed, like I was the one being difficult. Joel, don't be dramatic. You always say we're a family. Family helps each other. That line. Family helps each other. That was their favorite phrase, their shield. They pulled it out every time I said no, or hesitated, or dared to draw a line. And every time, I let it work. Until now. I changed all my passwords that night. Not long after, I came home late from work to find the apartment a mess. Dishes stacked, takeout boxes everywhere, and Lily sprawled across the couch with some guy I didn't recognize. Loud music, open beer cans, laughter that stopped the moment I walked in. The guy stood, blinking. You're the roommate? Lily snorted. He's not a roommate. He's my brother. Chill. He's harmless. Harmless. That word stayed with me as I stepped over the mess and locked myself in my room. She didn't even introduce me. Just dismissed me like some awkward extra in her life. And Mom. She didn't say a word about the party. Didn't even acknowledge the noise. The next morning, she asked if I could give Lily $50 for a new outfit, because she has that interview soon. They were treating my apartment like a hotel. And me? I was the concierge. It got worse. I started getting warnings from the landlord. Noise complaints, trash left in the hallway, unregistered guests coming and going at all hours. I tried talking to Lily about it, but she just laughed and said, relax, Joel. This place is barely big enough to care. Besides, the landlord likes you. She wasn't wrong. I'd built a good rapport with him. Paid on time. Never caused trouble. So, I did something I never thought I'd do. I scheduled a private meeting with him. Listen, I told him. I need to talk lease options quietly. Mr. Patel was understanding. Are you looking to move? Not exactly, I said. I'm looking to make sure that when I go, they don't stay. That conversation planted the seed for what would come later. But back home, the mistreatment kept creeping in like mold in the walls. One morning, I found Mom going through my mail again. I'd already asked her not to, but she claimed it was just to keep things organized. She'd opened my tax documents. When I confronted her, she waved me off. You never tell us anything, Joel. I didn't want any surprises. That line hit me sideways. Me not telling them anything. They knew where I was at all times. They tracked my income. They had my debit card info memorized. They asked nothing about how I felt, what I wanted, or whether I was okay. But heaven forbid I set a boundary. Suddenly, I was secretive and cold. Then came the birthday dinner. It was supposed to be a quiet thing, just the three of us. I offered to cook. I even splurged on steak and wine. But when I got home, the apartment was full of people. Lily had invited half her old college friends, and Mom was showing off like we were hosting a catered event. I stood there holding 2 bags of groceries as someone I didn't recognize asked me if I was the Uber Eats guy. And my mom. She smiled and said, "Oh no, that's just Joel. He lives here. Just Joel." I cooked anyway. I smiled anyway. I served plates and cleaned dishes while strangers used my bathroom and drank my wine. No one thanked me. No one even looked at me twice. When it was over and the door finally closed, I sat at the edge of my bed and stared at the floor for a long time. Then I took out my laptop and booked something quietly, just for me. It was a short-term rental in another part of town, furnished, no roommates, paid in full for 3 months. The countdown had started, and they had no idea. It happened a week later. I was in the middle of another long shift. One of those mind-numbing 12-hour days where even the coffee tastes like stress. My phone buzzed in my pocket around 3 p.m., right as I was fixing a stubborn server issue for a law firm downtown. I ignored it. It buzzed again a few minutes later, then again and again. Finally, on the 5th buzz, I excused myself, stepped into the stairwell, and checked the messages. There were over a dozen missed calls and texts from my bank. Suspicious activity. Possible fraudulent charges. Confirm or deny. My heart dropped into my stomach. I swiped open my banking app and froze. Nearly $2,300 had been drained from my checking account in 2 big charges. One to a high-end electronics store, another to a boutique clothing site I'd never even heard of. I stood there blinking at the screen, my chest tightening. It didn't make sense. My debit card was still in my wallet. No way someone had physically stolen it. Unless. I rushed home that night, adrenaline keeping me upright even as exhaustion tried to pull me down. When I stepped into the apartment, I found Lily and Mom sitting at the kitchen table, sipping wine and laughing about something on TikTok. The TV was blaring. The lights were all on. Takeout boxes littered the counter. They didn't even look up when I walked in. I went straight to my room, shut the door, and checked my drawer. The emergency credit card and backup debit card I'd kept hidden? Gone. I stood there staring into the empty drawer, a strange ringing in my ears. It wasn't even locked. I'd stupidly thought I could trust them. 5 minutes later, I walked back into the kitchen, quiet and calm on the outside, but ready to boil over on the inside. "Did one of you use my cards?" Lily looked up, eyebrows raised like I was being unreasonable. "Oh, that? Chill. We were going to tell you." Mom didn't even blink. Lily needed a new laptop for that remote interview thing, and I found her a good deal. Plus, she didn't have a working card, so I figured. "You figured you'd steal from me?" Mom bristled. "Don't say it like that, Joel. You're blowing this way out of proportion." I laughed, not out of humor, but disbelief. "You spent $2,300 without asking me. You took my emergency card. You went through my room." "Oh, please," Lily interrupted, scoffing. "It's not like you're broke. You've been doing fine. What's your problem?" That's when I knew. They didn't feel bad. Not even a little. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was entitlement. Naked and ugly. They saw me not as family, not as a person, but as a means to an end. A wallet. A lifeline. A tool. And now that I was starting to pull back, they were just helping themselves anyway. I stared at them both, trying to hold back the storm building in my chest. "You know what the worst part is?" I said quietly. "It's not the money. It's the fact that you didn't even think I deserved to be asked." Mom rolled her eyes. "Joel, you're always so dramatic. This family has shared everything since day one. Your father, don't bring Dad into this." I snapped, sharper than I intended. Dad would never have done this to me. Silence. The air thickened. For a second, I thought I saw something flicker across Mom's face. Guilt, maybe. But it was gone in a flash, replaced by cold defiance. "You're acting like some martyr," she muttered. "We've been through so much, and all you do is count pennies like we're strangers." "You are strangers," I said. "I don't even recognize you anymore." And then I turned, walked back into my room, and closed the door behind me. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just sat down and pulled out the lease from my drawer, the one for the new place I'd already paid for. Move-in day was 3 days away. Originally, I'd planned to just disappear quietly, leave a note maybe, but now they'd made it personal. That night, I checked my phone obsessively for updates on the fraud report. Thankfully, the bank flagged the transactions quickly and began reversing the charges, but it would take days, maybe a week, to get the full refund. In the meantime, I was officially broke until payday because of them. I canceled all my cards, locked my credit, moved every login and PIN into a secure password manager, and I started packing quietly, one box at a time, when they weren't looking. But just when I thought I'd reached the peak of betrayal, one more thing happened. Something worse than the money, worse than the lies. It was the final straw, the thing that would turn my quiet exit into something far more calculated. And it started with an email I wasn't supposed to see. It came in the middle of the night, like most gut punches do. I couldn't sleep. The apartment felt too loud and too still at the same time. The kind of eerie silence that hums in your ears and won't let you forget you're alone, even with people down the hall. I was scrolling through my email out of habit, trying to clear out junk and unsubscribe from the endless flood of retail spam. That's when I saw it. A forwarded email from Lily. The subject line, "For Mom to use Joel's info." I opened it without thinking. Maybe some school thing, I told myself. Maybe it was old. Maybe. Nope. My name, my social, my date of birth, my employment history, all of it. It had been forwarded to a loan application email address. Not once, but twice. I stared at the screen, frozen. My little sister and mother had used my identity, my personal information, to try to open a line of credit in my name. Twice. Both applications had failed, apparently because I'd already frozen my credit a few days prior after the stolen debit card fiasco. But if I hadn't, if I'd waited a week, they would have succeeded. My chest tightened. I felt sick, like the floor had dropped out beneath me, and I was still falling, slow and cold and endless. They didn't just think I was their wallet. They thought I was their property. I didn't confront them. Not right away. Not anymore. What was the point? There were no more misunderstandings to clear up. No more chances to give. I was done speaking into the void, trying to reason with people who had already sold off their respect for me in exchange for convenience. But it hurt. God, it hurt. All that time I'd spent breaking my back to make sure they were okay. And this was how they thanked me. By trying to sink me deeper into a debt I hadn't asked for, hadn't agreed to, didn't even know about. I went to work the next morning in a fog. I couldn't focus. I stared at my screen while emails piled up and Slack notifications buzzed like angry flies. I missed meetings. I forgot lunch. My manager pulled me aside gently and asked if everything was all right. And I almost told him. I almost unloaded the whole truth onto this well-meaning stranger in a blazer who brought his dog to Zoom calls and always complimented people's backgrounds. But I didn't. I just nodded and said I was tired. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed and looked around the room. The same room I'd had since I was 23, where I'd taken care of my mother, paid for Lily's textbooks, covered her therapy bills, her dental work, her car repairs, all the little pieces of their lives that no one else wanted to deal with. My world had shrunk to this square box. And even here, I was a guest in my own space. That's when I broke down. I didn't sob loudly. I didn't scream. I just sat there, silent tears running down my face as the weight of it all, the betrayal, the exhaustion, the years I'd wasted, settled on my shoulders like wet cement. And then, after a while, I stood up, wiped my face, and got to work. I started gathering documents. The lease agreement for the new place, receipts from my last 10 rent payments, screenshots of the fraudulent credit applications, the bank correspondence. I printed everything out and put it in a folder marked in case they fight. Not because I was planning a confrontation, but because I needed to be ready. For once, I wasn't going to leave anything to chance. I booked a moving van for early Sunday morning, 6 a.m. sharp, while they were still asleep. I packed everything I owned into boxes over the next 2 nights while pretending to just be cleaning out. Neither of them noticed or cared enough to ask. On Friday, I transferred my direct deposit to my new bank account, the one they didn't know about. I removed myself from every shared streaming service, utility account, and Amazon profile. I deleted my browsing history. I backed up my personal files. By Saturday night, All that remained were the clothes I'd wear out the door and the folder of evidence tucked under my arm. Mom came home late that night, a little tipsy, laughing about something Lily had said. They passed my door and didn't knock, didn't speak, just kept walking like I didn't exist. That was fine, because by morning I wouldn't. But just before I went to bed for the final time in that apartment, I stood in the kitchen, looked at the space where I'd cooked hundreds of dinners, and took one last breath. I didn't feel angry anymore, just empty. And that emptiness, it was the first sign that I was finally letting go. What I didn't know was that in just 48 hours, everything would explode. And not just because I was gone. No, what came next was bigger, worse. Because when you spend years building someone else's comfort on top of your pain, and then you pull out the foundation quietly, they come crashing down all on their own. Sunday morning, the sky was still ink black when I closed the apartment door behind me for the last time. I didn't leave a note. I didn't send a message. I just left. The moving van driver didn't say much. Just a quiet nod and a where to as we loaded up the boxes. By 7:30 a.m., everything I owned was stacked neatly in the living room of my new apartment. A small but clean one-bedroom on the edge of town, with sunlight pouring through big windows and a kitchen I didn't have to share. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. For the first time in nearly a decade, I stood in a space that wasn't drenched in guilt or obligation. I locked the door, took a long breath, and collapsed onto the floor in the middle of the empty living room. No one was yelling. No one was asking me to fix something. My phone wasn't buzzing with, "Hey, can you send $40?" texts. I could finally just exist. That same morning, I opened my laptop and started the final phase of my escape, cutting every remaining tie. First, I emailed the landlord of the old apartment, attaching a copy of my rental payment history. I politely informed him that, effective immediately, I was vacating the premises and would no longer be responsible for any damages or rent incurred after that date. I didn't name names. I didn't blame. I just removed myself from the lease and requested written confirmation. He replied within the hour. Understood. Thank you for your communication and consistency. Best of luck. Then, I unfroze my credit briefly, filed an identity theft report, and submitted documentation to the credit bureaus and the FDC about the fraudulent loan applications, complete with the forwarded email from Lily. It wasn't revenge. It was just protection. The moment they tried again, they'd be flagged in every system. Lastly, I blocked their numbers. I knew that part would sting them more than anything else. Not the money, not the lease, not even the shock of me disappearing. It would be the silence. No more, "Hey Joel, can you," texts. No more instant fixes. No more, "We're family, right?" loopholes to climb through. Just nothing. At first, I expected to feel guilt. But I didn't. What I felt was space, breathing room, a slow, growing calm that took root in the quiet. I got back to work that week with a focus I hadn't had in years. Projects that once dragged now flew by. My boss pulled me into a one-on-one on Friday and said, "I don't know what changed, but you're on fire this week." I smiled. Just got some distractions out of the way. That month, I finally started saying yes to things I always told myself I couldn't afford. Not because I was poor, but because I was too busy funding someone else's comfort. I got a gym membership, signed up for a cooking class, took a weekend trip to the mountains, read for pleasure again, slept in on Sundays, left my phone on Do Not Disturb, and took long walks without having to rush home to fix someone else's mess. By the end of the second month, I'd saved more than I had in the last year. I didn't realize just how much money I'd been bleeding, not just in bills and emergencies, but in death by 1,000 little withdrawals. Gas money, grocery top-ups, random shopping trips, unspoken expectations, all gone now. And with them went the constant, gnawing anxiety in my chest. I started therapy again. Real therapy, not that "I'll just Google my symptoms and read Reddit threads" version I'd been surviving on for years. And during one of those early sessions, I said something I hadn't even realized I believed until the words left my mouth. I didn't leave them. I rescued myself. Because that's what it was, a rescue mission when I almost didn't survive. In the third month, things began to snowball in a way I never saw coming. One of my freelance clients, a cybersecurity startup I'd been doing odd jobs for, asked if I'd be open to a more permanent role. They were small but growing fast, and wanted someone who could juggle multiple roles, wear multiple hats. "We want someone with backbone," the founder said. Someone who knows what it's like to be the go-to guy, but doesn't let people take advantage of that. I laughed. Yeah, I said. I know that guy well. They offered me a hybrid role with flexible hours, a 30% pay bump over my current salary, and a small equity stake. I took it. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't just working to survive. I was building something for me. Every step away from them made my world wider. Every day, without their noise, sharpened my focus. I didn't post on social media. I didn't gloat. I didn't try to make anyone jealous. But one night, just for the sake of it, I Googled my own name and checked my credit report. The fraudulent loan inquiries were still visible, marked, flagged, reported, failed. I smiled. Not because I wanted revenge, but because the system worked this time, because I worked, and because a storm was coming for them, not from me, but from the world they were no longer shielded from. I had been the wall that kept the consequences out for years. Now I was gone. And as the weeks passed, the cracks began to show. I started getting texts from unfamiliar numbers. Hey man, is this Joel? Your sister gave me your number about some money she owes. Hi Joel, this is Stephanie. Your mom mentioned you'd be handling the payment for the event next week. Blocked, deleted. But the desperation was growing. Then, exactly 91 days after I walked out, I got the message I didn't expect. A single email from Lily. Subject line, why are you doing this to us? And inside was a storm. I didn't respond to Lily's email right away. I read it 3 times, then closed my laptop and went for a walk. A long one, the kind you take when you're on the edge of something and need to feel the ground under your feet before you decide how to jump. The email was filled with a predictable cocktail of guilt tripping and gaslighting. The classics. We've been worried sick. Mom cries every day. You abandoned your family. You're punishing us for one little mistake. And the final blow. We never even used the money. The loan didn't go through. Nothing actually happened. So why are you acting like it did? It was almost impressive the way she twisted the truth. Like their actions didn't count because they failed. Like attempted betrayal didn't matter if they weren't successful in the theft. But that wasn't what stuck with me. It was the sentence tucked quietly into the middle, almost like it was thrown in without thought. We've had to sell some of Mom's stuff just to keep the lights on. She even had to borrow from your old boss. That made me stop cold. My old boss. That could only mean one person. Mr. Dawson, the owner of the neighborhood tech shop where I'd worked part-time during college. He was a kind man in his 60s, semi-retired now, and not someone you'd ever ask for money unless you were truly desperate or manipulative enough to play the sympathy card. I hadn't spoken to him in years, but I still had his number. I gave it a day, then called him. Joel, he answered, chipper as ever. Been ages. What can I do for you? I kept it light. Hey, Mr. Dawson, I heard you might have been in touch with my mom recently. Just checking in. Everything okay? There was a pause, a long one, then a sigh. Joel, look, I didn't want to say anything. But yeah, your mother and sister came by the shop a couple weeks ago. Said they were trying to cover rent and groceries. And that you'd had a breakdown. That you left suddenly and weren't working. Said you were in some kind of mental health spiral. They showed me an old photo of you. Said it was the most recent. My throat tightened, and I asked, trying to keep my voice even. They said you were unstable. That you had episodes. That you'd been in and out of hospitals. That one hit like a hammer to the chest. They weren't just manipulating people now. They were rewriting who I was. That changed everything. This wasn't just about money anymore, or mistreatment, or old wounds. This was a calculated smear campaign, a way to discredit me to every person who might one day hear my side of the story. They were laying the groundwork to explain why I'd vanished, and painting themselves as the victims while I was off playing the villain in their fairy tale. That night, I opened a new Google document titled The Ledger. Inside, I started chronicling everything. Dates, bank statements, emails, screenshots, texts. I documented every dollar I'd spent on them, every fraudulent attempt they made, every lie I could prove. It took days, but it was worth it. I wasn't going to use it immediately, but I was going to have it, because power, I realized, doesn't always come from confrontation. Sometimes it comes from preparation. Meanwhile, things kept getting better for me. The startup job took off. The company landed a massive client, and I got pulled into more strategic work. I built internal tools, streamlined systems, and ended up getting my name mentioned in a board meeting, something I never thought would happen in a business with a dozen Ivy League resumes sitting at the table. By month 4, I had a raise. By month 5, I had my own direct reports, a small team under me. And by month 6, I was invited to speak on a panel at a regional tech summit. A big deal for someone like me. The guy who used to sneak dinner in at 11 p.m. after his second job, only to find the kitchen trashed and the leftovers eaten. I wore a proper suit, got a fresh haircut, walked on stage to warm applause. And after my session, I lingered by the refreshment table, just taking it all in. That's when I saw a familiar face across the room, a woman from my old neighborhood. She used to go to church with my mom. She blinked when she saw me, then lit up with recognition. "Joel, my goodness. I almost didn't recognize you. You look amazing." We exchanged small talk. She asked what I was doing now, where I was living. I gave polite but vague answers. Then she tilted her head and said, "You know, your mom said you'd moved away for, well, recovery. I'm so glad to see you're doing better." "Recovery?" I smiled politely. "Yeah, I heard she was telling people that." She hesitated. "Is it not true?" I looked her in the eye steady. "No, but I appreciate the concern." She seemed confused, but nodded. Later that night, I opened the ledger again and updated it, because now I knew the full scope. They weren't just taking my money, they were taking my reputation. Slowly, piece by piece, reshaping my image into something they could manipulate and pity. But the best part? They'd left a trail. And when the time was right, I'd use every last piece of it. Not just to reclaim my name, but to expose them for exactly what they were. Not victims, not struggling family, but users. And soon, the world would see them that way, too. The moment came sooner than I expected. It started with a voicemail, garbled, frantic, and 2 minutes long. It was Mom, barely holding it together. Her voice a mixture of fake sweetness and strained desperation. "Joel, honey, please call me back. I know you're still upset, but things have gotten out of hand. We need to talk. It's not about money. Well, maybe a little, but it's serious this time. Lily's in a bit of a mess, and she could really use your help. Just please don't ignore this." I didn't call back. Instead, I poured a cup of coffee, sat at my desk, and opened the ledger. By now, it was a masterpiece. Over 50 pages, cleanly formatted with timelines, evidence, screenshots, and even footnotes. I had bank statements, a notarized affidavit from my old landlord and Mr. Dawson, fraudulent application screenshots, and records of every single bill, transfer, and message from the past 2 years. And on top of that, I had connections now, small ones, sure, but useful, like Emma, the head of communications at my company. We'd struck up a solid friendship at the tech summit after she heard my story and asked about the funny family anecdotes I shared in my panel talk. I'd kept it vague then, but after a few after-work drinks weeks later, I told her the real version, the unfiltered one. She didn't just listen. She offered help. "You ever need to get your side of the story out," she said. "Let me know. I've got people in media, local outlets, podcast circles, real storytellers." I hadn't needed it then, but now I was ready. Because revenge, real revenge, isn't just about making someone hurt. It's about making the truth undeniable. It's about taking control of your own narrative. I started with the bank fraud report follow-up. I updated my claim, adding the most recent evidence, the forwarded emails, the admission in Lily's messages, and the identity theft attempt. The investigator thanked me for the thorough documentation and said it would speed up prosecution if they pursued charges. Then I contacted my old landlord. I asked him politely and professionally to confirm in writing that I'd left the lease months ago and that any damages or unpaid rent that occurred after my departure were not my responsibility. He obliged. I included the letter in the growing archive. Finally, I uploaded a redacted version of the ledger to a password-protected cloud drive, and I shared it with 5 people. Mr. Dawson, Emma, my current boss, a legal aid contact I'd met through my job's HR benefits, and most importantly, Lily's last known employer, a small marketing firm I tracked down via her half-baked LinkedIn page. She'd apparently used me as a reference, claimed I was her mentor. So, I called the company, asked to speak with HR, and told them I was uncomfortable being listed as a reference by someone who had recently attempted to commit identity fraud in my name. I didn't give them the whole story, just enough for them to raise an eyebrow. I sent the link to the document and advised them to make their own decision. Within 48 hours, Lily was fired. How do I know? Because Mom showed up to my new apartment. Yes, showed up on my doorstep, eyes puffy, hair disheveled, looking like she hadn't slept in days. I don't know how she got the address. Probably through one of the few mutuals we still had on social media. I'd underestimated her willingness to dig. I didn't open the door. I watched through the peephole as she knocked, then banged, then begged. Joel, we need to talk. You've gone too far. You're ruining her life. You're tearing apart this family. Why are you doing this? She said that over and over. Why are you doing this to us? And that was the moment I knew I'd won, because they still didn't get it. I wasn't doing anything to them. I was finally refusing to carry them. That afternoon, I sent out a final email blast. Not dramatic, not angry, just firm, factual, and calm. I titled it, For the Record. In it, I outlined everything. The years of financial dependency, the identity theft, the lies they'd spread, the money stolen from friends and connections. I didn't embellish. I didn't rant. I just told the truth, with footnotes and evidence to back every word. I sent it to my former landlord, Mr. Dawson, our extended relatives, the few who still believed their stories, her old college advisor, every person they'd conned money out of using my name. And of course, Mom and Lily themselves. I ended the message with one simple line. You lost access to me the moment you decided I was easier to exploit than to love. I won't be reaching out again. Please do not contact me. Then I turned off my phone. The fallout was swift. Friends messaged me in disbelief. Some apologized for believing their lies. Others sent words of support. Mr. Dawson called just to say, I'm proud of you, kid. My boss pulled me aside later that week and asked if I needed time off. I didn't, because the funny thing about revenge, once it's done right, once it's clean and final, you don't feel the fire anymore. You feel peace. As for them, I heard through whispers and back channels that Lily tried to apply for another job, but her reference list had suddenly dried up. She moved back in with Mom, who was behind on rent again. The social circle they'd clung to started shrinking. People stopped replying. They became whisperers in the places they used to dominate. No big blow-up, no courtroom drama, just the slow, quiet erosion of reputation. The kind you can't undo, the kind that follows you. And me? I was free. But there was one more moment left. One last card I hadn't played. And it would come not from me, but from someone they never expected. It happened 6 weeks after I sent the final email. I'd almost forgotten about it. Life had settled into something quiet, stable, and for the first time, mine. I was finishing a project at work when I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Normally, I'd ignore it, but something told me to pick up. Is this Joel Turner? A calm, official voice asked. Yes, this is Officer Delaney with the Financial Crimes Division. We're following up on a report you filed several months ago regarding identity theft and attempted loan fraud. We've concluded the investigation. Charges are being filed. My breath caught. They used your information on multiple applications, he continued. We also found attempts to impersonate you during 2 rental applications. Your documentation was thorough, and to be honest, it's part of what made this possible. We'll be issuing subpoenas shortly. Thank you for cooperating. I thanked him, hung up, and sat there stunned. That was it. It was real now. Within a week, Lily and Mom were both served. I didn't have to be there. I didn't want to be. I had no interest in seeing their faces or hearing their excuses, but I read the court's summary when it was posted online. Fraudulent use of identity, attempted credit manipulation, defamation by impersonation. Lily pled no contest. Mom tried to fight it, claimed it was all a misunderstanding, that she didn't know what she was doing. The judge didn't buy it. They were both hit with fines, court fees, and most importantly, a formal flag on their credit reports. Future employers would see it. Landlords, lenders, anyone they tried to take advantage of next. I didn't cheer. I didn't gloat. But I did feel something click into place, like the last piece of a puzzle I'd been staring at too long. Not justice, but clarity. A few days later, I got one last message. A letter, handwritten, no return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. Mom's. The envelope was crumpled like it had been stuffed into a bag and reconsidered a dozen times before being sent. Inside was a single page. Joel, I don't know what to say. I wish things had been different. I wish you could forgive me. I don't blame you for anything that's happened. We're struggling. Lily's not doing well. I know you probably hate me, but I still think about you every day. Love, Mom. There was no apology, just regret wrapped in manipulation, sealed with shame. I folded the letter once, set it on the table beside my morning coffee, and stared at it in silence. Then I fed it into the shredder. Because the truth is, I didn't hate them. Not anymore. I just stopped believing they deserved a seat at my table. And as I sat by my window, watching the sunlight stretch across my new life, the life I'd built with no strings, no guilt, no leeches, I realized something simple, something freeing. Sometimes peace isn't the absence of pain. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more crazy Reddit tales, and ring the bell so you never miss the next one. And hey, share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know what you would have done in this situation.